Hello everyone and welcome to this comprehensive Ryanair guide. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to get the best value fares within Ryanair, i.e. the cheapest possible tickets. In addition to this, I'm going to be telling you what this means in terms of when to book flights, how to understand the algorithm. Now, bear in mind this is based off observational studies, but as someone has used Ryanair quite a lot and generally has booked flights not just for myself but others, I generally have a good grasp generally of how this works, which I want to relay onto you. In addition, I will also be showing you how you can get the best seats within Ryanair for free. That is, how to avoid the middle seat without paying a cent. And finally, also, I'm going to show you how, for those of you who are more bigger plane enthusiasts, or those of you who may fear flying on the 737 MAX, how you can identify which aircraft you will be flying on. There will also be some other tips and tricks, and make sure to follow the timestamps. So I'm going to give you some timestamps. Hopefully that will make navigating the video easier. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first section of this video is going to be talking basically about how to book flights to ensure you get the best price. Now, you're probably aware that most websites and most flight websites are going to use cookies, which will track you, and that basically will mean that they will know when you want to fly. And the algorithms, while this is not corroborated, it's always better to err on the side of caution, that basically you never want to look on the date you want to fly in. So say we want to fly to London. So if we go here to London, I spelled that wrong. When I say spelled that wrong, put a typo in. Say we want to go to London and we want to fly on March the 22nd. Thing is, you do not want to put the date you want to fly on, because then this is going to remember, it's basically, you're telling the algorithm you want to fly on this date, and if you keep looking at it, it's likely the algorithm might, try to increase the price because there is interest within that flight date. So instead, what I always do anyway, is I just put a random date within the month I want to fly. So let's say the 8th of March. I'm going to click search. Wait for this to load, and then you just scroll through, click on a few random dates along the way, just trick the algorithm. Basically, you are tricking the algorithm to some extent, but the reason you're doing this is because basically you don't want to tell the algorithm that this is when you want to fly, because that's of no use to you. Basically just giving it information that it's probably going to use against you. And this goes for any website, not just it's just in general, this is how websites work. And it's not corroborated, but again, err on the side of caution. So we said that we wanted to fly on the 22nd of March, and we can go there and then look at the flights. And then what I do is I'd also just not close that tab, because again, the algorithms are smart. If you stay within a certain date for a long time, it's going to know you're probably looking for that date. So then just go through there, but we know we actually want to fly on the 22nd. So that's the first thing to do. Basically, never on the search button, never actually search the date you want to fly on, just search some random date within that month and then use the scroll feature, just because again, you don't need to give, put it this way, information is power. You never want to give information that is not necessary and basically is only going to be used against you potentially. The second thing is basically probably wondering, how exactly does the pricing system work? Well, it generally seems that the Ryanair prices go in increments of 7. That is, that they start now, this is the first thing. When flights are originally scheduled, so flights are generally scheduled within 6 months in advance. So if you take a look here, at the moment, it's the 7th of February 2023. If we go to, let's go and just click another destination, let's say Paris. Actually, that's probably a bad one. Let's say Warsaw, because some of the really big tourist attractions, they tend to have flights scheduled for a long time. But as you can see here, if you keep scrolling, the flights are scheduled until October, depending on the flight, with some of these scheduled all the way until the next year. Basically, what happens is when they launch the November flights, what's going to happen is that they're actually only going to put them at, probably they won't be at the lowest price that they could be at, because essentially what they do at the start is they try to put a higher price and to see if there's interest, and then if there's interest, the price goes up. But if no one's booking on that date, then the price will go down. And generally, it's kind of known. Usually, people book within 2 months in advance. No, generally, it's quite rare people book 6-7 months in advance, especially if it's a flight that does like this one that's daily. It'll be basically unheard of. Like, I booked the flights from London next month, and playing basically things like 2 or 3 people booked at sea so far. So basically no one books these things that far in advance. So basically this means that it knows that if you're booking this in that far in advance, you probably just need to fly on that date. You aren't really concerned about the price, so you're going to be willing to pay something higher. So generally, it's not advisable to book too far in advance, except if you're flying in summer to a popular destination, especially if it's a destination, say you live in the UK and there are many people in the UK that have families or friends in other countries. Then you will want to book those flights as far in advance as possible, because that means you're going to have lots of demand, and basically obviously flights are limited supply essentially. So in that case, it's rare you're actually going to get the flight prices for cheaper. I'll give you an example. For example, so I wanted to fly to Sofia in the winter. And I booked my flight in September. The flight was €60, and it's as you know, that was the cheapest it ever got, and it never went cheaper than that. So if you take a look here at December, let's say the 13th, and then just one way. Basically, it never got cheaper than that. It just stuck at €60. And if you take a look here now, as you see here, okay, in this case, I would probably want to book this. This will probably go down in price because, again, when I booked it was about €60 in September. It never got down to that. So, okay, maybe it depends. In this case, it's obviously 11 months in advance. So that's a bit extreme. But generally, you have a rough idea of what's acceptable price. If it's a busy destination, usually you're not going to be looking at prices below €60. If it's not a busy destination, you can look at flight prices at 10 to €20. So yes, you will kind of need to have some spec knowledge within your country on what the busy destinations are. But sometimes also, like in busy periods, they will launch more flights. Like for example, last year they launched loads of new flights to Sofia, and then basically the price was kind of like 60 to €70. That's just something to bear in mind. But like, let's say summer you want to go to Zagreb. So when I went to Zagreb, the prices were like €100, and they never went down. So if you take a look now, what the prices are, and I'm just gonna click one way, and I'm gonna what's the click flexible date? Okay, exact dates. So if you go here to I think it was August. So let's go to August. Let's put in the first, and then scroll through. As you can see here, these are the flight prices. So basically, again, because that was a popular tourist destination, it's not that likely that you're going to be getting the flights for significantly cheaper than this. So that's just something to bear in mind when booking. Generally, probably you'd be looking at this price for summer. So in that case, it might just be better off to book it far in advance. Again, this is a bit of a risk. Essentially, it's kind of like trying to trade derivatives. If you don't know what derivatives are, it's basically essentially what you're doing when you're buying a flight price, because if you're buying a flight now, you're securing that price and basically trying to secure yourself against the price rise. But if the price falls, then you also don't make gains. Essentially, you've hedged all the risk from the flight price. But anyway, that's that. Also, one thing you can do if you want to check, I guess, what the likelihood of something being booked out is, you can actually go and start booking the flight. So let's say you want to go to, let's say this time, I don't know, Berlin. What you can actually do is you can start booking the flight, because when you start booking the flight, it's going to ask you to select a seat. And when it asks you to select a seat, you're going to see how many spaces are available on the airplane. Now, you are going to need to be signed in for this. So log in later. Put in here name, Mr. T.E. We're not actually booking a flight here, so this is not, you know, we're not doing anything slightly wrong. But basically what you can do here is you can check, because once you start booking your flight, it's going to show you, it's going to ask you if you want to select a seat. And what you will notice is that already there are quite a few seats booked out. Now people tend, a lot of people tend to pre-book seats in advance. So because there's so many pre-booked seats in advance, it basically means that this is probably going to be a busy flight, and that, you know, the more seats that basically are booked, the less seats will be available for that plane. So the more unlikely it is that the price will fall. So this is just another little trick you can use to basically see what are the chances the price is going to be falling. Because say if there's only like 3 seats booked and everything else is empty, it's unlikely many people have bought the flight. So in that case, you're going to want to book seats. Because bear in mind, the reason there's so many booked seats is because people traveling with kids will generally be are obliged to basically buy a seat because they need to be sitting beside their kids. Basically, that's just another little trick you can use in order to kind of gauge if it's likely that flight will sell out, and if now is the time to buy, or if you want to wait a bit and see if the price will, you know, fall in the future. Okay, so that's essentially all there is within the prices. I'm just going to quickly explain, I guess, how the algorithm works. Again, like kind of touched this at the start, but basically, some things to note. There are some times when the flights just won't be booked, won't be fully booked. So in that case, the prices just won't tend to rise. Bear in mind that these kind of seat sales will do generally for some destinations that aren't that popular. There's no point in booking them so far in advance, because there'll be more flights in demand. For example, I booked the flight to Brussels in January during the cyber sale. The price in January, I think at the end of December, was the same. Was the same price. So again, the seat sale doesn't always actually give you flights for cheaper than you can get them anyway. Sometimes actually the price stays on, because essentially the price will essentially depend on, again, demand and supply. So that's just something to bear in mind. Generally, you know, what happens is if there's no bookings for a while, the price will go down like by €7, and then again if there's no bookings, it'll go down by €7, something like that, and then if there's bookings, go up by €7, and so forth. And if, you know, people continue to keep booking, then the flight price will just continue to go up, and it won't be going back down. So, you know, generally it's a good idea to keep an eye on things. If you start seeing the price going very far up, and it's not falling back down, then probably means you want to secure that price as far as possible. But do bear in mind that prices for Ryanair flight prices do fall, especially if it's off season. So basically, Ryanair does actually tell you when the peak season is, but the peak season is essentially from the 16th of December to the 4th or the 9th of January. So it's the 9th of January, and then also basically anytime from the 1st of June all the way up to mid-September or the end of August. And then also anytime there are school holidays. So you have the midterm, which is in October, so Halloween weekend, a Valentine's weekend, anytime there's a bank holiday, which will be specific to your country. So if, for example, in Ireland, there was a new bank holiday this year, was actually yesterday on the 6th of December, and therefore flights were significantly more expensive that weekend compared to other weekends. So that's just some things to bear in mind when booking flights. Basically, if it's not in the peak season and it's not a popular destination, then people, generally the price flights will fluctuate quite a lot. They'll be quite volatile and they will fall. It's happened to me twice. I've actually paid more than it needed to when it's flying off peak. So that's just something to bear in mind. Don't always, rush to buy because essentially prices will tend to fall. Bear in mind, this will only apply until within 6 weeks, 5 weeks, because Ryanair will fully book out flights. And basically what's going to happen is going to put the prices low, people start booking, and then the algorithm is going to start triggering the price to go up and up and up. So essentially, the ideal time to book a flight is generally within 6 weeks of the departure date. Except if you're flying on the on-peak season, as better just book it a bit earlier, not like something extreme like 8 months in advance, but generally 3 to 4 months in advance, you'll secure probably the best price possible. And also, sometimes in the off-season, generally you'll also get a good price then. But just bear in mind, sometimes if you're seeing that, the flight has been cheaper, or you're seeing on the days it's cheaper, and stuff off-season, potentially the price will fall as well. On the weekend, sometimes can be a bit harder to predict. Okay, so that's essentially all there is to prices. We're going to now go in and go to the next part of this video. I'm going to be showing you how to get the best seats within Ryanair. Now what I'm going to show you is how you can actually get the best seat within Ryanair for free. So basically, Ryanair check-in opens 24 hours pre-departure. The thing is, you never want to actually check in immediately, and I'm going to explain to you now with this little demonstration here. So if you take a look here, we have a flight to London Stansted. The time is 11:44 and the flight is at midnight on the next day. Now, if you take a look here, what you want to do is you want to go check the seats. If you go check in now, what's going to happen is if you check in early, because there's many middle seats available, because people don't tend to book the middle seats, you're going to be allocated most likely a middle seat, and you're going to see this happen now. And the reason for this is because twofold. Firstly, Ryanair is going to allocate you the middle seat to incentivize you to buy another seat. And second of all, that's exactly why. It's basically you're going to get allocated the middle seat because Ryanair wants to discourage you from, they want to discourage you from choosing the random seat allocation, so you're most likely going to get a middle seat because that's what's available. So instead, what you want to do is you don't want to check in until you've done this little trick. I'll show you now. So instead, what you want to do is you don't want to check in until you've done this little trick. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to here. What you're going to do is when you have a flight, you're going to go and select that flight. You're going to go into seats, and then you're going to check the seats. As you see now, because it's so late, the time's 19:55. The flight's due at 22:35. There's only 2.5 hours. You'll notice there's only one middle seat left, and all the other seats are window seats. The reason this is because basically Ryanair has allocated most middle seats to people already. So essentially what you want to do is you want to go into your flight and you want to check the seats. So we're just going to play that again for you in case you missed it. You want to go into the flight and you want to check the seats. And only check in once you see that there are no middle seats left, or basically there is very few middle seats left. So that's essentially what you want to do, and that's how you can get that done. And that's how you get the best middle seat. Just bear in mind, obviously, sometimes the flight will not be fully booked, so therefore sometimes there will be middle seats left. But basically, the later you check in, the less likely it is you're going to get allocated a middle seat. Obviously, don't check in very late, and sometimes you just have to check in early. All right. And then also, another trick when you're actually checking seats, you can also tell if your flight's going to be full, because if you check your seats before departure, you can also notice, for example, that so if you go here, you'll notice that the flight's due in about 3 hours, and look how many seats are available. The reason there's so many seats available is because this flight was empty. There's only 30 people on board. So essentially, you can use this seat trick to actually check this, not only how many seats are left free, but also as an indication if you're going to have a full flight or not. And also, now this basically might, this is, you have to exercise caution doing this, but technically speaking, you could check literally 2 hours before departure how many seats are left available, and then you can actually just sit in that seat, even though it's not your allocated seat. However, a caveat, bear in mind that sometimes Ryanair is actually going to, there are people who check in at the desk. So in that case, they might actually get allocated that seat. So it's a bit of a risky strategy, and it's not one I would recommend pursuing. But you know, if you want to try it there, since this is a guide, it is technically something you can try to do. I haven't done it myself, but just letting you know that is something that is potentially possible. The last thing I want to show you is how you can tell what airplane you're going to be on within Ryanair. Ryanair flies 3 different aircrafts. Ryanair has 5 subsidiaries, so there's Ryanair, Ryanair UK, Buzz Airlines, there is Malta Air, and then there's also Lauda Europe. These are subsidiaries within Ryanair, and then there's obviously the core Ryanair. The fleet that Ryanair has are the Boeing 737-800 aircraft, the Boeing 737-8200 aircraft, which are the 737 MAX, and also if you're flying with Lauda Europe, they have Airbus A320-200 aircraft, which are being leased until 2028 at the least. And also, actually, I also want to tell you what seats not to book if you're not looking for a window seat. So I'm actually going to mention that first before I talk about. Actually, I'll mention that after. So, okay. When you identify the plane, just go here to Ryanair plane identifier, and then what you're going to do is, I'll show you now. You're going to go again into the flight. You're going to click seats, and then you are going to scroll down. And what you'll notice is an aircraft that has 33 rows. This aircraft has 35 rows. This is a Boeing 737 MAX. So an aircraft with 35 rows is a 737 MAX. So that's how you can tell if you're going to be in a 737 MAX. An aircraft with 33 rows, as you'll see here, is the normal Boeing 737-800 series aircraft. Do bear in mind that sometimes, very, very rarely, they can actually switch them up. So, for instance, when I was flying back from Madrid, it was meant to be a 737-800, and then on the last minute, they changed it to an 8200. The reverse could also happen, where sometimes you might be flying on a MAX, and then they change it to a 737-800. This is where it gets risky if you're trying to fly, if you're trying to check in last, because what happened is, because obviously the 737-800 has a bit less capacity than the 737 MAX, basically because the flight was overbooked, 5 people got denied boarding, and it was the last people to check in. Last people to check in are based on sequence numbers. The sequence number is what order you have checked in. Basically, do bear in mind that there is that risk, so that's why it's generally not a great idea if the flight's fully booked to be checking in last if you're on a 737 MAX. And then lastly, an Airbus A320-200 aircraft. It's quite simple to identify. If you book the flight with Lauda Europe, it will say this is operated by Lauda Europe. Then you're on a 737-200. Then you're on an Airbus A320. And also, as you'll see here, it has 30 rows. And that's how you can know an Airbus A320-200 aircraft. And then finally, just to bear in mind, I'm going to tell you now what are the aircrafts with the which seats rows will not have windows, and therefore you should not book. This depends on what aircraft you are on, but if you're on the Boeing 737-800, that is an aircraft with 33 rows, you do not want to book rows 11 or 13. There's no 13. Sorry, you don't want to book rows 11 nor I think it was 14, because there's no window in those rows. So basically you'll be paying for a seat without a window, and also they're more expensive ironically because of the front, but basically there's no window, so do avoid, I think it was 11 or 12 and 14. Also, if you're on the 737-800 aircraft, the windows, so basically the emergency exit rows are towards the end. You do not want to book those because there's no window there either. So just bear that in mind. So folks, hopefully you found this Ryanair guide useful. If you have any other tips and tricks for when using Ryanair, do let us know. So we can pass that on, and let me know what you think of this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If not, well, you probably aren't watching until here, so you know, let's move on. And also do subscribe to the channel for more aviation content and future guides on travel tips. So yes, thanks for watching and goodbye.